Think of the house you live in as a storybook of history, romance, events, and people. Open this book and these tales come alive, enabling you to see through the walls, the windows, and doors into a colorful pageantry of the past. Claire Baisley, author and Cape Cod historian.
Listen closely to the hidden echoes of Cape Cod. Our walls do talk. Tucked within the walls of Cape Cod's historic homes are links to the rich treasure trove of our nation's history. Most early homes on the Cape were built out of necessity, but for Seth Pope, spite was the motivating factor.
Wow, poor Seth Pope. He was 22 years old, and he decided to support himself while he was exploring by wearing a little backpack and having things to sell from it, like maybe needles, threads, things like that. And he was also probably looking for a wife because there was a very limited number of women around in those days, 1600s. So he came to Sandwich, and he must have lingered there because the selectmen of town decided that he might stay all winter, he might need to be housed and fed, and so they thought he'd be a charge upon the town. So they sent the constable to kick him out. Many years later, 1699, his son John Pope decided he would marry Elizabeth Bourne of Sandwich. Now Seth had his big chance to show them who he had become. Because he was now a justice of the peace, he was called Captain Seth Pope because he owned parts of 2 boats.
In 1699, after having made his wealth elsewhere, Seth got his revenge. Returning to Sandwich, Seth made good on his early threat. He bought acres of land, a mill, and built a house for his son John and wife Deborah. But Seth never moved into a place that once threw him out.
He wouldn't move here and live here. He said, "I'd never live in that damn town."
The new home was built over an earlier structure.
Right underneath me is the foundation of the earliest house. It would have been 1 room with a loft above.
In 1749, John Pope's son sold the expanded family home to Joseph Nye. In 1764, just before the American Revolution, Joseph Nye's son, also named Joseph, inherited the house.
And he was a real mover and shaker in town. He was very, very wealthy. Very competent man, and he and his wife Catherine had 6 children living here. And he got elected to be a member of the Committee of Correspondence leading up to the Revolution. And Joseph also got elected with a man named Dr. Freeman to the Provincial Congress in Boston. Well, one day, Dr. Freeman got lured out of his house on Grove Street by a child who had been sent there saying, "Your friend is sick, you've got to go see him." And Dr. Freeman was very suspicious, but he decided he'd better go check on his friend. The 6 men who had set him up saying his friend was sick came out and they beat him up severely. Joseph Nye got really scared and he decided that he better build a way to escape from his house if he got attacked. So up in his bedroom, he put in a secret panel that he could escape through.
The escape route went past the first floor into the basement and out to the river.
And this is my husband, Bix, taking the route that Joseph would have taken and coming back.
If time was running out, Joseph Nye also built the modern-day equivalent of a panic room under the stairs.
Joseph Nye II would have used this little room as a place to hide during the Revolutionary War. If someone came to the front door and he was frightened, he could quickly run into here. He could lock himself inside. Now there is a space for a previous lock, and this is a Victorian lock. And we don't know why they wanted to use it in the 1840s on, but it could have been 1920s rum running. But what it's really used for is so that they can go in and repair the chimney. You can see some of the mortar is clamshells that were crushed.
Other unusual signs and symbols from a superstitious time are scattered throughout the house.
On a door, there is a beautiful carving of a rowboat, and above it is a daisy wheel. And the daisy wheel was made by putting a nail with a string and another nail, and you could carve into the wall and then make daisy shapes, so it looks very pretty. So if an evil spirit came wishing to do something bad to the family, they would see this daisy wheel and be attracted to it and go into it and start following all the different patterns forever. And this would protect anybody going out to sea. That was why the boat was there.
The grounds surrounding the house also reveal vestiges of the past, including a gate to keep livestock in and hitching posts for horses. Another anomaly has been the center of somber speculation.
Usually farmers in the old days prided themselves on removing any rocks from the part of the property that visitors would see. However, outside there are two rocks that always confuse me. I think, why didn't they move them? What's it here for? And I realized that one of them had been purposely broken in half, so it looks like the top of a cradle, and then the bottom looks like a footstone, like in a graveyard. Now, there was no graveyard around here until 1666. I think it might be a little grave for a baby.
For Jana and her husband Bix, purchasing the John Pope house was love at first sight.
We bought it in 2009, and we had driven by it, and I saw this big gray house on the hill. So we went and looked at it, and we were both absolutely enchanted.
The Cape's strong maritime heritage echoes with tales of sea captains. Such tales are often told with a wink and a sly smile. At this early 1800s home, the old adage, "a woman's work is never done," appears to be quite true.
I've gathered that this was a farmhouse, a smaller farmhouse. It was passed hands a few different times until Captain Sumner Gorham Peirce bought it, and he sailed all over the world.
This fastidious captain insisted on wearing a clean shirt every day during his lengthy 2-year voyages. Captain Peirce purchased his shirts in ports around the world, thereby reducing the use of fresh water on board, and brought the dirty ones home.
This captain came back with 700 shirts for his family to launder. And of course, the town knew he was home because 700 shirts were in the side yard, hanging to dry.
Many of the home's architectural details harken back to its sea captain owner. The carvings on the main staircase mimic waves crashing to shore. The sturdy beams in the bedroom ceiling resemble an inverted ship's hull. In a bedroom across the hall, a hidden cabinet on the side of the fireplace reveals a secret stash of liquor for that nighttime toddy. In the 1850s, Captain Peirce altered the simple farmhouse by building a stately 4-room Federal-style addition with 2-over-2 windows, featuring larger panes of glass.
It was less expensive to make smaller panes of glass, and these are very large panes of glass. In addition, that's when clapboarding was added too, where most of the houses are shingles. So he liked to show his wealth.
In 1888, ownership passed from a sea captain to another lover of the sea. David Freeman Loring rose from assistant keeper to head keeper of Highland Lighthouse. Commissioned by George Washington, Highland Light is the tallest and oldest lighthouse on Cape Cod. Located in an historic 1830s house in the heart of Captain's Mile, the Lighthouse Keeper's Cafe and Pantry honors the vital role that lighthouse keepers like David Freeman Loring played, guiding sailors back to their home ports on Cape Cod.
David Freeman Loring and his family, they moved down here, and he had 3 kids, a son and 2 girls.
Yeah, I think by being a steward of a home like this, you realize that you're connected to the past, that whether you find something in the wall or whether you find a story about the sea captain, you realize that Cape Cod is such a big part of the earliest beginning of our young country. And we don't have a lot of history like they do in Europe, but what we do have is worth saving.
I actually, during one renovation, put some little treasures and toys in the walls with some written information about us, so someone will find that someday, hopefully, and really get excited.
Further along the Cape in Eastham lies Cove Cemetery, the town's oldest. Buried here are 3 Mayflower passengers along with other early settlers. These ancient pilgrim gravestones were what midwife Netti Nolles saw as she looked through the wavy panes of her kitchen window.
So, as a child, my mom used to take us to do gravestone rubbings before they were illegal, and we would do them at that small cemetery on the highway next to where the birthing house was. So I always kind of admired it.
The birthing house, better known as the Netti Nolles house, was all about beginnings, not endings. Here, Nettie Ma Nolles guided 62 innocent souls into the world and cared for their mothers and families for the token sum of $15 a week. Embedded in these walls were the newborn's first cries, the first cries of protest by these innocent to the Cape. By the late 1990s, Nettie's small Greek revival home that played such a vital role to so many Eastham and Orleans families was in danger of demolition.
So they were going to donate the house, the birthing house, to the fire department for practice, and that's where Warren Quinn came in. He had been born in the house, lived in Orleans, and he saved the house and moved it to this location.
The town historic committee didn't want it torn down because it's a house that, I guess about 64 people were born in, of which I was one of them. And I got 2 brothers and a brother-in-law that were born in it, and there's still quite a few people living that were born in it, and it's kind of got quite a bit of history.
To keep this special home in Eastham.
History is something that you hate to see die. So you continue on and you do as much as you can.
Warren placed it on this lot and then put it on the market. And so through my grandfather, I found out that it was for sale, and I came to look at it, and I just, fell in love with it because I'd always admired it from afar, but I got inside and really wanted to restore it back to what it maybe had been at some point. And so I came over to look at the place to potentially buy it from Warren Quinn. He was happy that someone was looking to restore it, not tear things down and make it modern.
While O'Neill labored to restore and save as much as she could, including millwork and floors, the original wallpaper in the kitchen hung in tatters. O'Neill sought out a company that replicates vintage wallpaper.
The reason I put that in there is because where the Nolles house, the birthing house, and the main house was, they were asparagus farmers. Much like my grandfather's family, a lot of the old families grew Eastham turnip during the fall season, and then in the spring they would plant asparagus. The 2 crops complemented each other, so that was a shout out to old Eastham putting the asparagus in the kitchen.
Another challenge for O'Neill was dealing with the old walls of horsehair, lathe, and plaster. As she was installing new insulation in the living room, O'Neill made a surprising discovery.
Yeah, I found an old shoe, and I was already familiar with the fact that a lot of the old homes had shoes in them because the owners would put them in the walls in order to bring good luck or to ward off evil spirits. So this was found in the living room wall, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was kind of near where the chimney is, and yeah, it was just a fun find.
For current owner Linda Green and her husband, the Netti Nolles house is a chapter in time.
I like very much the fact that the foundation is made from the bricks that were original. A lot of times they're not available in terms of restoration work. So I think knowing that we're sitting on that foundation of bricks that were taken from this home is really important to me. It just has charm and it has love, and there was this history of love and caring from the woman that had the birthing room. The room that was referred to as the lying-in or the birthing room was the place that was added on. And my understanding is that that was when she needed to earn some income because her husband had I believe he had an accident, but he wasn't able to bring all the income. So as an independent woman, not independent, but wanting to keep the family intact and to keep the family going, she became the lying-in nurse, midwife. I don't believe she had formal training. But I think that room has, it's got all the children and the mothers that were there together and being well cared for. So I feel very I feel content in that room. I'm a mother myself, and I feel really happy that's a part of what that room is when I'm there. So I'm happy with it, and that's where we stay when we're here.
High on a bluff overlooking the Oyster River, one family complex echoes with the accomplishments of a renowned Supreme Court justice.
So my great-grandfather, who was Louis Brandeis, the Supreme Court justice, was on the court, and he started renting this house from the Hardy family that had become very well known because they built Chatham Bars Inn, and they lived here. And then they started renting to my great-grandfather, but then they warned him, "We're going to sell it. Do you want it?" And he said, "We had to buy it in order to protect the property." People came here expecting a mansion because Justice Brandeis, had made a lot of money in law, and he had substantial funds. He could have bought a mansion. Instead, he bought a simple property and there's all these records of him working on the bluff, planting trees so that the bluff wouldn't erode. It's not a big house, but there's two staircases. One is at the entrance and the other one is at the back, but it's very steep. And someone put a rope on it. And so you have to kind of bring yourself up. But no one would ever build that now. So they, instead of like tearing it down, instead of destroying it, they moved that staircase to the next, like this small addition, and use that instead of like trying to build something new. And you could tell because all the worn stairs. But it is like, it's amazing to have these architectural touches that are done out of necessity, out of interest, but don't necessarily make the most sense. But it's just the way they had it, so why destroy it? Why not just use it? Not being too precious with history. Like, there's a way to be too precious with history where nothing can change. That's not what Brandeis felt, it's not what we feel. Actually, what should dictate change is the ability to live into the structure even more. And Brandeis built this beautiful little nook, which also became a place that in the 20s and 30s they would recite poetry. And every Sunday there would be the poetry reading, and everybody would recite poetry to one another. You can find books there from my great-grandfather, signed books by Brandeis. That's another amazing thing about these houses, is that it's archaeology in real time. So all you need to do is got to go through the books and say, okay, I can see what era that's from. So this is like, it's a treasure. I mean, this is the place where we've had so many of our family memories happen. I mean, we're really here in this place, and it's an incredible treasure, blessing, and also a source of gravity for our family to bring us back together. Right now I'm sitting part of me is sitting in what was known as the glass house. We built this beautiful glass structure that with all these windows that he used as his study. And so he, would every summer he would bring out all these briefs from the Supreme Court in DC. My father and his cousins would be like a kind of fire brigade to bring all of these in here. We have the same dining room table that my great-grandfather gathered around with some of the most important dignitaries of the world. And the story that my father would always tell is that if they didn't know a fact, someone would go around the corner to the Encyclopedia Britannica and look it up. I guess some of us do that now with Google. And the amazing thing is so much really happened here. One of the first things, the third year that Brandeis owned this property, 1927, Sacco Vanzetti, which was a huge case around two Italian anarchists who were accused of murder, that my family was very involved in supporting them, defending them. Right outside, in front of this house, the lawyer for them came and asked Justice Brandeis for a stay of execution. Justice Brandeis came out and said, "You may not enter. I cannot offer a stay because of the role that my family has played in this case." They were executed, and it's just one of those moments that happened in this space. It's not a happy moment, but it's a really important moment.
The judge's descendants waged their own battles in semi-friendly games of croquet.
And my grandfather was famous for saying, don't you dare send my ball into the poison ivy. You know, it was like, we would literally, I mean, it was scary, vicious. One of the great pleasures of this house is a huge boathouse right on the river that was built by Justice Brandeis, where they kept their boats. And by the way, they didn't hire someone to put the boat in the boathouse. They did it. And we did it when I was growing up. So we have footage where people are rolling the logs with these heavy wooden boats, getting them into the boathouse. But it was also obviously a place where people loved to go play, because there's these letters from my father's generation scrawled on the side of the wall in green. I was like, who allowed them to do this? But we saw this when we were growing up. We were like, oh my God, our parents were children here. That meant something to us, that they experienced the joy and also the chores of coming here when they were our age. And the boathouse still serves. We have our kayaks in there. And there's a famous canoe that now hangs in the loft. But this was Justice Brandeis's canoe, and he was famous for canoeing around Chatham. People used to see him in the mill pond and in Stage Harbor, and he would go out in all kinds of weather. And I have a great photo of my grandmother in the 20s with my great-grandfather in this canoe. So my grandmother loved this place. Before she was married, she had a bunch of friends. She would bring them here, and she took them out sailing. My great-grandfather told my grandmother, his daughter, that they had watched with binoculars their sailing to see how they had done, because they were going out. And my great-grandfather was famous for something called the right to privacy. He wrote a big paper about it. It was one of the most famous legal documents in the 20th century. Anyway, my grandmother responded, what about the right to privacy? We feel very lucky that we still are able to hold on to this property that has original feel, that has a feel of Cape Cod, and also a feel of the Spartan yet beautiful principle of living that Justice Brandeis felt, that my grandmother felt, that we were raised with. And it's so valuable to our family and, frankly, to the nation's history and the nation's family.
Without these Cape Cod homes, their walls would not echo with the stories of those who have protected and maintained Cape Cod's irreplaceable legacy.
There's so many houses that need to be saved and cared for, as they really represent the earliest part of America, the earliest part of the growth of our young country started here. And so I think that's a connection to the past is what's nice.
We have a lot of places being torn down now and just rebuilt to have sit empty for much of the year, and I just would like to see more of the places that show what people really lived like.
There's things that can't happen again. We look at the window and the light is beautiful in this home. And then the walls are talking. I think something that we need to respect and keep and continue. And I think, of course, there's all the reusing and recycling, and why let it go if it's here and can be a part of our time now and our future.
I think that when you own an old house, you should never modernize it. It will lose all its charm, all its mystery, and all its history.
This was a household that really valued great ideas, and every summer they would come here to imagine a better America, how we could work together to create a better America. So the walls could talk. They would be celebrating, I think, all the conversations, as well as our most intimate moments.
Brimming with legends and lore of old Cape Cod, these historic homes serve as tangible reminders of the past. Once lost, their tales may be forgotten. Cape Cod's historic past needs our protection now and forevermore. These historic homes are the essence and soul of Cape Cod. Save yesterday for tomorrow.